I'm reading The Adventures of a South Pole Pig. I'm reading chapters 9 and 10. If you'd like to follow along, I'm starting on page 59. That afternoon, while the men worked to repair Nessie's stall door, Flora thought up a plan to get Mother back. She would ask Nessie to come over and break down the fence. Luna could take her the message. As Flora gave this plan some more thought, she sorted through the leftovers in the slop trough and found 4 corn cobs with the good stuff all chewed off. "Gather round, everyone," she called. "I've got a new game called Feelin' Kicky." She and her brothers were going to get strong. Then, if Nessie wasn't willing or able, maybe they could break down the fence themselves. "Here's what you do," Flora announced. "Toss the cob as high as you can, like this." She took the corn cob in her mouth and jerked it into the air. "Then you run to the fence, turn and kick it really hard. Run back and try to stomp the cob before it stops rolling." She glanced at Alfred. For the first time since Mother had been taken away, he looked a little happy. "I'll go first." She tossed the corn cob and dashed over to the fence and spun around and reared up on her front legs as her back hooves flashed out behind her. Tap, tap. They clicked against the fence. She was hoping for a louder, thumpier sound, but she tore back to the cob and was still rolling and jumped on it with her front hooves. "There, like that." Flora spun around again and then looked around at her brothers while she caught her breath. "Wow," Alfred said. They all lined up behind the corn cobs to take a turn. Her brothers cheered one another, especially when the moment came to bang their little hooves into the fence. They played Feelin' Kicky the rest of the afternoon. The next morning, Flora got up before everyone else. She walked to the fence and stood for a moment and then spun quickly and kicked. It might have been her imagination, but it felt as if the boards trembled a little. She wished she could show Luna. She ran up the manure pile to see if her friend was anywhere around. Instead, she saw a big truck backing down the gravel road. It came to a stop in a cloud of dust just on the other side of the junk heap, and the wind brought the smell of its exhaust. One by one, her brothers woke and wandered over, peeking with their sleepy eyes between boards. It wasn't until the engine suddenly quieted that Flora heard the dogs. It sounded like hundreds of them, barking and whining from inside the back of the truck, which was covered by stained, greasy canvas. 2 strangers and the man with the dark beard came around the corner of the truck and strode purposefully toward the pig pen. What was this? Flora could hardly breathe. "Don't let them catch you," Mother called from her pen. "Stick together and dash from corner to corner." Flora looked at Alfred. Alfred hurried over and glued himself to Flora's side. She nuzzled him for encouragement. "Get ready," she whispered. 2 of the men stepped over the fence and into the pen. They lunged and grabbed as Flora and her brothers ran to the farthest corner and jammed themselves into a tight bunch. As soon as the men came close, they ran again, grunting and squealing, to the next corner. "That's it!" cried Mother. She was standing and looking over the top of the gate. She sounded frantic. "Stay together, children!" Was that why they moved her out of the pen, Flora wondered? So she couldn't protect her children? The gate between the 2 pens shuddered. It was Mother throwing herself against the boards. "Don't let them put their hands on you," she shouted. "Don't let them pick you up." The 3rd man lunged at Flora. She jumped sideways to dodge his hands. Even though she was the smallest pig now, she was faster than her brothers. Her strong back legs powered her forward through the gap between his legs. She glanced around. The men with the beard fell on Alfred. "No!" shouted Flora. Flora shouted. She dashed over, aimed for the man's head, spun, and kicked backwards. "Ow! Hey, it's you again," he said. She could tell she missed his head, but the man let Alfred go. The 3 men dusted themselves off. Flora's mother was still shouting encouragement, but Flora's attention suddenly slipped. The dogs in the truck had kept up their barking. Were they the same dogs from her day in the cornfield? They sounded similarly excited, but happy too, as though they were finally off on the adventure they had been training for. Adventure. Did she dare? This time, when the men slowly advanced with their hands out in front, Flora only pretended to scramble. She darted one way and then turned back. Her brothers, including Alfred, all made a break for the other side of the pen, but Flora stood her ground. "Flora, run!" cried her mother. "Get that one!" the man with the beard shouted. "She's nothing but trouble." The men closed in from three sides, and Flora stomped her front feet. She kicked one of her back legs, but she did not run. And when they fell on her and picked her up, she did not struggle. "Flora!" Alfred squealed. "Goodbye," she shouted. "Don't worry about me. Alfred, work hard at your kicking." The men hoisted Flora out of the pen. The truck growled. Dark smoke leaped from a rattling pipe. Flora shivered. "You've got yourself a good one there," she heard the man with the beard say. The rest of his words were drowned out as a flap in the dark canvas was flipped up and Flora was shoved into a wood and wire crate. Flora felt a quick arrow of sadness stab her. This was no run in the cornfield. Mother, Alfred, would she ever see her family again? If she had a howl in her, this would be the time to let it out. All she could do was squeal. The air inside the truck was warm. It was filled with the smell of dog and gasoline, and the sound of barking was now deafening. The truck growled deeply and moved with a lurch. Flora was thrown against the metal grid of her cage. Judging from the yelps around her, so were her traveling companions. The barking stopped. Flora picked herself up as the truck crunched along the gravel road. It vibrated and shook and went over heavy bumps now and then, which made it hard for Flora to keep her footing. She kept knocking her head. Then, after a bone-cracking heave that lifted every cage into the air and slammed them back down, the ride smoothed out. Flora was definitely scared, but she had picked her moment, and she had shown spirit and courage. Luna would be so proud. Luna. Flora didn't even get to say goodbye. Flora looked around her cage. A dirty, crumpled blanket lay on the floor, and two metal pans were upturned. There might have been water in one of them until the big heave. Now there was just a wet spot on a corner of the blanket. Beside the other bowl were 2 carrots and half an apple. If only Alfred were here with her. No, it was a good thing her little brother was safe in the pen. Of course, Luna would be just fine. She was happiest telling stories, except now she would have to find someone else to listen to them. Daylight flashed in from the corners of the canvas sides. In the flashes, she caught glimpses of the dogs. She watched as some of them circled inside their cages before lying down. There were perhaps 10 or 15 altogether, and they didn't seem afraid or worried. "Oscar?" she said. It was the only name she knew. "Is Oscar here?" she said louder, though she doubted anyone could hear her over the truck's roar. There was no answer. Whether these dogs were from the farm or not, Flora was sure she was the only pig, judging by how hard the men had worked to catch her or one of her brothers. There must be a need for a strong and fast pig on this adventure. No pig on the farm was stronger or faster than she was. The drone of the wheels made Flora sleepy. She circled on her blanket, as she had seen the dogs do, and then flopped down. Boom! Flora's eyes opened. Crash! Thunk! She scrambled to her feet. The truck had stopped moving. Men were shouting to one another. The flap at the back of the truck suddenly opened, and light poured in. 2 men reached into Flora's cage, lifted her out, and placed her on solid ground. She rocked a bit, getting used to the feel of a steady surface again. Hands fumbled around her neck, buckling up a leather collar and then chaining it to a short post. The dogs were lifted from the truck one by one, still inside their cages. Then the truck roared away, louder than ever. At first, Flora had trouble opening her eyes. The world was too bright, but by squinting, she slowly got used to it. The dock was busier than a pig pen full of piglets, and noisier than a truck full of dogs. Men in heavy boots stomped here and there. They carried, rolled, and pushed boxes and barrels from one pile to another. A ship with a thundering engine pulled alongside the dock. Waves slashed as the men tied the ship down as if it were a living thing that might escape. On top of the post sat a white bird, staring at her. "Hello," said Flora. The bird squawked and flew off. Flora turned her head. In one direction were the piles of boxes and crates and cages. She couldn't see inside any of them. In another direction, there was nothing but blue, sparkling water. This had to be the ocean, Luna described. Who would have thought Flora would someday be here, listening to the waves and actually seeing them? And the smells. Luna hadn't told her about the fish smell, or the smell of the oily, dark wood that she was standing on. Plus, there was a smell of garbage, and of course, the salty sea. A manure pile smelled fresh and clean compared to this, but Flora liked it. To her, it was the smell of an adventure. "Slide out the gangplank," a sailor bellowed. A great board banged down from the ship onto the dock, and soon men were filing up it, carrying barrels and boxes. Crash! Flora jumped. A large wooden box had been slammed to the ground behind her, almost crashing her tail. But the men didn't seem to notice or care. Only the ringing of a big bell finally made them stop and look around. They seemed to relax and breathe easier, and they addressed one another for the first time that day. Lunch boxes appeared in strong hands, and the men sat in small groups. They tore at their sandwiches as Flora watched. That was better. Now Flora could think, maybe even talk to someone. She took a dainty step. Her chain was just long enough that she could see into the first cage. The eyes that looked back were soft blue with black in the middle. Flora blinked. It was Oscar from the farm. She didn't remember him being so large, nor that he had strictly black and white fur. He blinked back when he saw her. Flora cleared her throat. "Good morning. It's nice to see you again. You're Oscar, right?" "My name is Flora." The dog blinked again. "That's right. I'm Oscar. Good morning." Oscar had a deep, smooth voice. Flora hoped he would feel like talking. "Do you know what happens next?" Oscar looked Flora over. It wasn't an unfriendly looking over, but slow and thoughtful, as if he weren't sure he should be talking to a pig. "Yep," he said finally. "We get on a ship and sail away." "That ship?" asked Flora. "That's it." Oscar flipped his nose toward the ship tied to the dock. "The Explorer." "The Explorer?" A thrill went from Flora's shoulders down to her hooves. "That sounds very exciting. And what is it we'll be exploring?" Oscar sat up. "We're going to be the first expedition ever to cross the Antarctic. I've already been there to get ready for the journey. I went with a team months ago to make food drops." Flora was confused. "But didn't I see you on the farm the day I escaped my pen?" Oscar raised his eyebrows. "Oh, so that's why you look familiar. Yes, that was me. When I'm not leading a team, I train young dogs. Only this time you'll be pulling a sled, right?" "Yep, that one over there." Flora looked. Resting on a cement platform was a wooden sled with curved runners, sweeping diagonally frame pieces, and a long, narrow bag for carrying a load. Flora imagined dogs pulling it over the snow. It looked nothing like the cart with wheels back on the farm. "Wow," she breathed. "Is it fast?" "Depends on the strength of the team. No wonder the men had grabbed her. They really did need a strong, fast pig. Flora waited for Oscar to say more, but he was silent. She tried to think of a question to get him talking again. "Do you like being a sled dog?" she asked. "Well, that's like asking if a bird likes to fly. Being a sled dog is what I was born to do," said Oscar. "You have to be willing to work hard and get cold and tired. You have to be just a little bit crazy. But at the end of the day, you know you've got the pulling down done and earned your supper. There's no better job on earth." Flora was enchanted. She tried to imagine herself running ahead of the team while they were acting just a little bit crazy. "When we get to the Antarctic, do you think you could show me a few things about being a sled dog?" she blurted out. Before Flora could hear the answer, the other dogs burst out with a great barking and snarling, and even digging and biting at their wire doors. Flora looked around, heart pounding. What could be the matter?